Hello, everyone. Thanks you for joining us again for another episode of the Blue Fletch Enterprise Mobility Roundup podcast. Today, we are joined by Dean Scontras. Dean, did I say it right? Is it?
You did, yeah, very good. Yep.
Yes. God, I sometimes I butcher those. I'm trying hard. Thank you for joining us. Dean is with Okta. I think you've been there for like half a decade now. Is that right? Or
Not quite that long, but it feels like it.
yeah, no, it moves fast in the technology space. And Okta had their big conference last week. So this is being recorded in the end of November 2022. And they had Dean and his team just hosted what was called Octane 2022, which is a big event out there. Today, I want to just get a bit about Dean's background and talk through and learn a bit about what Okta's doing and a couple questions for you. Blue Fletch focuses on mobility and wanted to hear about some of the spaces. I know we do a lot of integrations with a lot of clients with you guys, and it's been a great tool set to work with over the last probably 5 to 10 years for us. I think we started using it pretty early on. But Dean, thanks for joining us. I guess we can start out. Do you want to give us a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure, yeah. Sure, yeah. So at Okta, I'm the vice president of state, local, and higher education. So what we refer to, and most people refer to, as the SLED space. I came to Okta by way of acquisition from Auth0. So Auth0 was acquired by Okta, I think, in January of last year, and it was made formal in the following June. So prior to that, I ran all of public sector at Duo Security, which was acquired by Cisco. So I think the common theme there is I've always had sort of an interest and inclination towards, all things public sector as well as identity. And I think as we talk, that'll probably come or speak, that'll come a little clearer, because identity is going to be very important to how we, execute on democracy and government delivering on its mission. So prior to that, 25 plus years in various technology companies, a lot of them startups, some larger companies, and then a very brief episode into politics, but I came back to normal life.
All right, let's circle back around to that. I got a couple questions about that, but I guess on the SLED space, you said state, local, government education. Wait, I got it wrong. State, local government education.
Yeah.
For the SLED space, how have you seen that change in the last 4 years? I know for us, we've always been a little reticent because they feel like they're slow and you got to drag them along. For you, how have you seen that change, and especially around the security space?
It's a very, very good question. I often start some of these conversations by saying, I remember when Al Gore was talking about modernizing government and government 2.0. And, I don't think in comparison to the private world or private sector, it's been comparable, but I think one of the silver linings coming out of the pandemic was that it really truly catalyzed modernization for government, because everything you do with government typically is in person. You're going to a building, whether it's to get your DMV or fishing license, and that forcing function forced everything to go online. And identity became crucial to that. And we saw that at the beginning of the pandemic, where a lot of states became subject to fraud because people were, phishing credentials and getting people's identity and therefore getting their benefits. So the pandemic definitely served as a catalyst for modernizing government. So I think in the last 4 years, now you can do most things where you used to have to go and wait in line in a government building. You can do a lot of that digitally, and they call that modernization. And of course, identity is critical to that. And that's also reflected. One of the other events I went to this year was the NASCIO, the National Association of State CIOs conference in Louisville, Kentucky. And for, I think, 3 years in a row now, among their top 2 or 3 priorities are modernizing government, digital citizen services, and identity and access management. So I think we've come a long ways, but it's really, truly just the beginning.
With that digital citizen piece, I know your background, you came over to Okta from the Auth0, and Auth0 is really the piece that Okta is using to focus on the customers and end users, and the traditional Okta is where Blue Fletch has typically played with the employees and the corporate enterprise users. Yeah. With that like focus on end users, how have you seen that start to make a lot of those services better, especially in the government? Like as a consumer, I want things to be easier. I don't want 20 logins. Right. I feel like I do for one of my clients, at least.
Yep. The term we use is, a frictionless experience. And if you have to log on to something, multiple times, the less likely that customer is going to come back and spend money with you or return. And I'm hearing a lot of state CIOs and governors say the same thing. They want a single citizen sign-on for all services, from the local level of government to the county level to the state level. There are some things that make that really, really difficult, but I've heard that vision reiterated from customers multiple times over the last couple of years. I think that's truly the vision. Like I said, there's some things about government, the way it's more of a loosely bound confederacy at the state level, that make it really hard to sort of do that. But we want to have a single identity experience within a state, and then we also want to have a single identity experience across states. And I think that's kind of the end game. But as I said before, a catalyst was, oh my gosh, citizens have to interact with government now digitally. How do we do that? Identity is in the forefront. I don't want to wash over the fact that obviously workforce, what we call workforce or enterprise, is also very critical, because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about Suffolk County, New York, just the other day. Phishing is still very much a thing. Ransomware is still very much a thing. So we do both, right? We do workforce and we do citizen. It's just the citizen and the digital citizen stuff's been a little bit more in the news recently.
Yeah, the phishing. I think there's one of the stats you guys had at Octane. You talked about, I think, in the first half of the year. I think the number was like a billion phishing attacks.
Yeah,
that were monitored, detected. It's pretty crazy how prevalent that is, and just how many sites there are out there where people trying to steal identities.
Yeah, and as I was with Duo before, so we always think that MFA is kind of everybody's using it, but it's not true. There's still a lot of individuals, a lot of agencies, a lot of people just using username and password. So that's still very. I mean, one of our CISOs says phishing is still a thing. It definitely is still a thing.
Yeah, along those lines, I know one of the things that one of the common themes I heard at Octane was specifically around people. We always say people are the weakest link, and I think one of the things that I heard that resonated with me is actually, it's not people, it's passwords. Like, passwords are the weakest link. When you think about multi-factor authentication, having something I know plus a text message going to me, or tokens, like, how do you see that playing out in the government space over the next few years?
Well, for Okta, of course, offers the password list, right? Which I think is an interesting option, which we're not really seeing a whole lot of it in the state and local space. But I mean, we whether it's citizen stuff or workforce stuff, we kind of fit into the whole zero trust architecture, if that makes a little sense. And identity is the first component of the architecture. So whether it's just identity and access management SSO, or citizen SSO, or adaptive multi-factor, it's sort of, hopefully this answers your questions. It's all the above, and I do think, I mean, at the highest levels of government, including the executive order issued by the Biden administration last year, which was really instituting zero trust for the federal government, right? And of course, we were beneficiaries to that to some degree, because that includes identity and access management. We're now starting to see a lot of that at state and local levels as well. And I think that's the beginning. Again, I hope that answered your question. But that's the way we answer, how do you start on that zero trust journey? And I do think governments have become acutely aware of this and are now trying to implement it at the state level as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the personal story, I think I spent 45 minutes on hold last week trying to get my one of my state passwords reset, and it was not an awesome experience. So it's definitely, I'm rooting for you guys to be everywhere. I can't wait.
Well, you'll have to text me the name of the state afterwards. I don't want to, but that's one of the easy things we fix, right? Is automating that password reset. And there's dollars to be saved, time to be saved, but a better citizen experience. So that's an important one for us. We put that in our BVAs when we're doing return on investment for folks. That's a big one.
Yeah, definitely. I guess along those lines, can you speak to, I feel like there's a lot of, in the government, it's people always perceive it as slow moving and very political and hard to get them to do things. Like, for you guys, what are the biggest challenges that you encounter, the biggest challenges that your CIO, like state CIO and local municipality CIOs encounter trying to get people to move forward or actually get things done?
a little bit what I said before is that the state and the county and local governments are really, all intertwined. And it's not like the federal government where the executive can put out an executive order saying thou shalt do this. And, states extend services into counties. And if they extend services into counties, then the state is only going to be as secure as the county is. And again, identity is one of these things, as we said previously, you want to have one identity solution top to bottom. And when you have, even at the state level, one agency doing one thing and another agency doing something else, then you get to that multiple logon scenario you issued before. So I think just by the nature of governments being governments, it's not that they are, slow by nature. I think just inherently, trying to get, multiple agencies and multiple levels of government to do one thing is really, really difficult. And identity is, like you said, it has to be one thing. It should be one thing. And, you have one driver's license. Okay, well, you switch that over to the digital world. You want to have one digital identity. And you want to be able to use that across. So I think a lot of it is that. I think at the local level too, it's no secret they've been underfunded for a long time. We're now seeing some federal dollars and federal grants go down to the county level. There's been, talent and, cybersecurity expertise at the local level as well. So there's that makes it pretty difficult. But I do see some very sort of progressive CIOs and CISOs really leaning in on trying to do a single digital citizen identity across all levels of government within a state. That is really starting to pick up momentum.
So that's the holy grail of where states want to be in the next 5 years, or what's the timeline for that journey look like? When you see somebody do it, it just seems like a lot of work. Is it a 2-year roadmap, a 4-year roadmap? How do you get there?
I think it's one of those things. It's a little bit of the first mover status, and if you see one state do it, then everybody else will see. And we've got one potential state, and it's a smaller state that's very close to doing it. So, and a part of it is a little bit of, a lot of the grant money I was referring to has to be allocated by the state. So it's a little bit like when the federal government gives a grant to a state, there's conditions upon that money. So I think that's one thing that could sort of quicken it a little bit, is that the states now have a lot of money that they can use for counties to get them on board with a singular identity solution. I think that will help. But we have really seen, even in the last 6 months, one state in particular saying we're going to do this all in with Okta from the top to the bottom. But I still think, we're 5-6 years out from, there's a lot of talk around, sovereign citizen-owned identity. What does that look like? That you have, a wallet or personal, that all your digital identity stuff is tucked into, and can that be used like as something like an equivalent of a social logon today? Starting to see a lot. We do have, there was a little bit about what we call Okta Personal or Okta Wallet at Octane as well. But I think, again, especially in public sector, because you've got, so many different levels of government and so many different, entities, it's hard to really do anything singular. But I will tell you that the volume has picked up in the last 6 months.
So the Okta Wallet concept was interesting to me. I saw that, and it made me immediately think about that Apple has their passwords where I can store things and have my identity stored across my different devices I use with them. Like how are you guys different than that, or articulate at a individual level? Like my preference personally would not to have it tied to a big vendor and
right.
independent of you guys, but what's the big advantage to having that, or what would that vision look like?
So Freddie, who's one of our founders, I think he says it best, is one, it does have to be citizen owned. And two, he talks about, the rise of the identity cloud. We only do identity. And I think I heard this from a lot of CIOs out there too. They never want us tied to a specific stack. And I think that's one thing that's really, really important. It's independent, it's owned by you, and you can use it across whatever stacks you want to, which, whether we're talking about Okta Personal or Okta anything else, is kind of really, really the pure play that makes us really important. And that's the true vision, which is to become the identity cloud where individuals can have their identity and they can use it across platforms. And where we kind of segue that into the public sector space is not only be the identity cloud for workforce and for citizens, but also FedRAMP compliant and all the FedRAMP certifications around it. So, but I've heard this in several different governor's office, whether it be with chief of staffs, but there's a real insistence, especially in this country, that it's citizen owned and not government owned.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On the FedRAMP note, can you, for the folks watching along with this, can you describe or do your summary of what FedRAMP is and what its I guess, where it started a couple of years back and where it is now?
Yeah, so I think it's under the Obama administration originally, as you know, the government was looking at cloud and wanting to move away from on-prem data centers to cloud. They had a lot of various security compliance requirements, whether it's for hardware and software vendors. But when that paradigm shifted and went over to cloud, they created FedRAMP, which is its own 166 controls that cloud vendors have to have. And go through a pretty rigorous process of an independent assessment and 3PAWs and government sponsors and final approval and sign off by the agency and by the 3PAW that says, yes, you are, you are now government grade to do cloud. So it started pretty slow, but I think last I checked, there's over 170 individual cloud service providers that are available on the FedRAMP marketplace. Obviously, Okta is both at the moderate and the high level. So that's important. That's important to a lot of customers because, those other 166 controls and where that data resides and who can touch that data, it's extremely important. So it makes our value when we're going to the state level. You can imagine, people want to know about, breaches and so, and but when it's good enough for either the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, there's some value to that. But the FedRAMP was put into place specifically to put a new security compliance paradigm upon cloud service providers.
Got it. Thanks for that. So I guess shifting gears a little bit to here, you've been doing this for a long time. I know you gave your intro, going back even past like the cloud days, back to the, 2000, 2001, 2002, like the post.com days. If you had to go to a younger Dean and give yourself some advice and no, other than telling yourself to buy Bitcoin or stock, what would you think about, modeling that out or give yourself advice around or tell yourself to focus on or move faster on?
Yeah, that's it was funny when I read the question or I saw the question, that's immediately what I thought, the investments I would have made or places I probably would have stayed that. I remember being early on at Checkpoint and thinking, oh my God, how long can firewalls become before they become too commodity and the stock was only at $34. So I think that's one thing is patience, right? I mean, I think part of the challenge with, especially growing up then, there were so many different opportunities and so many different companies, and you're always taking a little bit of a guess and a little bit of a risk, but perhaps a little more patience at some. I remember the .com. Now that was probably a little bit of an exception, but having been with like a company that was selling to service providers, but you know what, they did make it through, right? And I think that's the one thing you realize is that there's not only resilience, but it's very rare for companies just to be sort of washed from the map. But look, I've always been sort of a startup high growth person, so I don't regret that, and that's always been my I guess my spidey sense is like, hey, this is pretty cool. In fact, the reason I wanted to go over to Zero was that I sensed that I saw the IRS was starting to put out these big RFIs for citizen identity, and they were huge, and I thought that's where this space is going. So that kind of is a little bit counterintuitive, a little bit more patience at times, but also my instincts have been pretty good over time. But I think there's some places I probably could have marinated a little bit longer.
Yeah, that's good feedback. And you mentioned this earlier, but you did run for Congress at one point.
I did.
So what's the story behind that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I'm originally a native New Englander, and before the part of my biography that we didn't get up. So I grew up in Maine, and I went to the University of Maine, and I was always kind of, I wouldn't say politically active. I was, a Boys State candidate in high school, studied political science, went back to Georgetown to the Continuing School of Studies and Liberal Arts, and got my I got 32 credits towards a master's in liberal arts with a concentration. It was a lot of the same classes, a lot of constitutional law. And I will tell you, that's kind of like, in fact, my daughter's in college now. We have a lot of great philosophical, political discussions. I'm Greek, so I don't know if it's just the Greek gene, because we like to think we created democracy, if that's where that comes from. And there's also the call to service. So that was always sort of in there. And then when we moved back to Maine, I did get to know some of the people who were involved, and an opportunity presented itself for an outsider campaign, and I ran once in a primary and lost, but not by a big margin. But then I got the nomination the second time, and that's what they really say you should run 3 times. And I'm not previewing a run, but the second one was actually a really good, well-run race. I was, came out of the gate down 20 points. By mid-October, I was up 5 points. And then there was an onslaught of really nasty negative commercials throughout the month of October, which I'll never forget, watching Dancing with the Stars with my wife, and these commercials would come on with me, and foreboding music, and like Dean Scontras wants to ship my parents' jobs to China, and it was like I didn't even like myself after I watched those. But I think anybody who's ever done that on either side is to be credited. It's not for the faint of heart. It is a contact sport if it's not a blood sport. But I've always believed in people with good ideas, and hopefully democracy depends upon argument and persuasive rhetoric, and those are always things that appealed to me. I've grown a little bit cynical, but it was a great experience. I got national exposure. I got to meet the two senior senators, or one of the senior senators, current senior senator from Maine, Senator Collins, and Senator Olympia Snowe were tremendously helpful to me. So it was a great experience for a couple of years. Won't do it again though.
I think you say that now, but 2024, we need some good candidates.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's so nasty. It's tough.
It is super hard. No, I agree with that. Are you still, outside of your job, do you still do advocacy at the local level? Are you involved locally in any?
I get asked to do, I was asked to do a lot of radio shows still up in Maine once in a while. No more TV appearances. I was writing a little bit for one website, but I don't go to county committee meetings, and I do have a lot of candidates call and ask me, not necessarily like, but how did you do it? What was the strategy? So where I can be helpful, I am, but I'm not like a flag waving party goer. I'm going to my county committee meeting every week.
Yeah.
So, no.
I'm sure it's still very useful as you're trying to help out these states and local bodies and education groups. So it's
tremendously helpful. In another state, so we use a lot of lobbyists. We engage a lot of lobbyists. In fact, most of we call them strategists, are former either secretaries of state, former speakers of the House, and when you know their language and speak their language, it definitely comes in handy. In fact, that's what I was telling my overall organization today. Is like, I don't want you to become political, but you need to know the politics of your state, because it's really, really, truly important. And I mean, getting back to identity, if you think about it, no sitting governor wants to have a breach happen on their watch. It's political. It could end a political career really fast. In fact, it came up here in the governor's race in Virginia, right? Our unemployment insurance fraud issue came up. So you do have to be savvy in this business, because a lot is politics. And when you're talking about the state and local market, I always say, and this is not a pejorative term, but state and local is for local yokels, and I mean that you have to know the local players and who they are. And these a lot of the folks in these state assemblies and offices have been there for some time.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I hope you guys, I hope Okta continues to move into that space. I think all of us, following along want a better experience with engaging with the government, engaging with municipalities and our counties. So it's awesome. Last question for you before you drop off. We asked this actually all our employees when they join, but like, what was your first cell phone, your first smartphone? Do you remember what it was?
I remember I worked for a reseller very in the early 90s, and they actually gave us these. I don't know if this actually counts because I didn't actually have it, but it was one of those big portable ones that
in a bag, the bag phone.
Yeah, in a bag. That thing was. I don't even know the name of it.
I think it's like Motorola like M20.
Yeah, so I don't know if that technically, but I think my first one was a Nokia
smartphone. Was it the little candy bar one or
yeah, exactly. The little that was I think it was. I'm not sure, but I was. It's funny. I think I remember my first cell phone number, which is really kind of creepy, but I do. 967-2326.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's awesome. Well, Dean, thank you for joining us. If people want to learn more about Okta or learn more about what you guys focus on, where can they find more details on you?
So Okta.com, of course, is a great, always encourage our state and local customers to reach out to their local partners, which we have many. So, but Okta.com, and we have a public sector tab there as well. So that's probably a good place to start.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you being on. And like I said earlier, Blue Fletch is a huge fan of Okta. Appreciate everything you guys are out there doing. Great tools, and you guys continue to grow it. And really look forward to seeing what happens in the next 5 to 10 years as you guys move towards that identity cloud that's really making everything more secure for all of us. But thank you again for joining us. And if you have questions for Bluefletch, definitely reach out to us. You can reach out to us at info@bluefletch.com or hit us up on the social networks. But Dean, thank you again. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.